the war within class changes. How your class has changed so far. So a lot has changed in terms of, obviously we have hero talents coming in. There's been a lot of rebalancing of hero talents. Let's see what those changes are so far as we dig into beta.
Surprise class reworks. That has been the vibe with almost every alpha build of the War Within so far, and it's been fun. We log in, we see things are different, and then a blue post pops up, full of changes and all the reasoning behind them. It's been great. Now, with the last build,
We'll have to wait and
there has
see,
been,
Killer.
of course, another wave of unexpected changes, so I basically thought now is a good time for us to gather together to go through these things, even though, of course, there will be more tweaks.
The Death
and
Knight changes
refinements
are
to
really
come.
good, it looks like.
Cursory glance over the big exciting things today, explaining them briefly, and then when we get a little bit more final and beta launches and it's time to properly go hard, we will do individual videos to hit every single class with the full depth that they deserve. It'll be hype. To do that, I've assembled a team, and today you and I are going to pay their bills with today's sponsor.
I'm thrilled to say our Ridge, this is awesome because their products are amazing.
Ridge
I've been
wallet.
using them for years, and I'm going to scrap the whole cheesy MMO, gear yourself up IRL idea that I had for something a bit more simple, right? Your wallet and your keys are things you use every day, so why not make them outstanding? Ridge's wallet is absurdly thin and functional. Their key case is simply the best. I mean, there's no key jangle. There's no keys sticking into your leg. And the best news is that for Father's Day, you can go to ridge.com/bellular for up to 40% off. Now, I would get my dad kitted out, but the problem is I actually already got him a
This
wallet and
Canadian
key case
bullshit in
for
chat, I
Father's Day
swear
last
it's
year.
probably
So here's
confusing
why
the
I
shit
love
out
my
of
wallet and my
people.
key case. The
I live in
wallet is
Michigan.
super
Jesus
thin,
Christ,
and
okay.
it's super
Go
customizable.
blue, by the
Number
way.
one, colorways. You have so many different options. They look absolutely incredible. I mean, Father's Day discount plus them having a brass model. Oh, that's tempting. Now, they're RFID blocking. They carry all the cards that you
Wouldn't
need.
this wallet
and if
hurt
you
your
want more
ass?
functionality, you can customize them. You can put a cash clip on, a coin holder, an
I mean, maybe I'm
AirTag
wrong.
holder, which is big, and another nice new feature, they are MagSafe compatible, and it even ships with a little locking plate for these guys, so it goes in properly secure. And then the key case, something that I have carried with me every single day for a long ass time. So
Interesting.
here's the gunmetal one they sent me, here's my own one. Basically, you put your keys in, they're held nice and secure in whatever order you put them in. They don't jangle about. There's a nice little clip. And of course, you want to put an AirTag on. That's real easy. I bought mine because I wanted a nice, simple, everyday upgrade that I would enjoy. That's exactly what I got. I've been a happy customer. That's why I reached out to work with them. And if you hit up ridge.com/bellular,
There it
you'll
is,
of course
boys.
find their Father's Day
40% off
discount.
your metal wallet.
However, there's nothing stopping you from treating yourself. So thanks, Ridge. Go check them out. Let me know what color you think looks the coolest. With that said, let's get into the video.
All right, back to the
Warlocks,
video.
I'll start with you. You guys have been on a
Warlocks,
goddamn roller
okay.
coaster. The Fun Police, of course, showed up for your abilities in a way that actually felt like classic stubborn Blizzard, but thankfully, they actually did have more going on behind.
The coolest thing I saw about Warlocks was their ability to freaking summon raid bosses. They could summon raid bosses. The freaking, what are they called? Those howling, the freaking demon hounds, whatever they were. Maybe he's going to say it here, but they looked amazing.
Though there have been a few L's, there's plenty of wins
From
too.
Argus.
Demolocks have had their class talent tree fixed up quite a bit. Basically,
Fellhounds,
they've turned a lot of 2-pointers into 1-pointers. Now, you're still losing the demonic cores nerf, right? So that is a big nerf to your mobility, but they are trying to make up for that with other ideas, like other changes and fixes. So here's the more important ones. You've got a new Vile Fiend. You can pick up one of Sargeras' Demon Dogs to upgrade your Vile Fiend with, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
and
very
it's up
cool.
every 30 seconds with 0 cost. Then Tyrant is actually now easier to get to in the tree, and it's always your core cooldown, and that does mean that Nether Portal has been closed and been replaced by a Doom rework that actually does a big-ass AoE explosion and
Interesting.
also summons in a Doom Guard. There were worries. It does seem
I just hope one day another class will be able to summon. Can we get another freaking class that can summon so raids don't have to be held up by the fact that there are no Warlocks in queue?
though that
I know
with some
probably
of those
Warlocks
losses,
don't wanna
there
hear
have
that, but
actually
Jesus
been
Christ,
some
man.
wins.
I mean, come on.
And of course, this is just another iteration on top of some pretty good news that we already got post.
Give somebody else some damn
Spookiness.
utility.
Okay, Destro then. So it had some of the same issues as talents, and those have been looked at. Some of their RNG damage is gone, and that's with the extra mastery talent now being fixed at 70%. And there's a bit more power being put into some rarely taken talents, things like Soulfire, Demon Fire, and Shadow Burn. And they've done that through a ton of additional buff talents, which you might think would be a problem, but to get the points to pay for that, a load of 2-point talents.
What's the best
have been turned
spec right
into
now
1-point
in
talents,
terms of
and
DPS
another
for
decent
Warlocks?
few have been removed. Things like Cry Havoc, as well as generally a huge tree revamp. So get this, Soulfire is now a capstone, and Dimensional Rift is actually your core spec cooldown, and it's in the middle. Now, there was a drama about losing Infernal from Blasphemy, and that still is happening, but you're going to get an Overfiend instead. So at least you still do get a
That's what I thought.
Affliction,
this
then,
is
you've got
Despero
a
right
massive
now.
amount
It's
of
the best
changes.
right now.
Loads of passives and effects have been gutted, and a lot of stuff has been added in their place. But it's not a rework. This is a class that is obviously still based around...
Yeah, if another class was going to be able to summon, I would say, you know, the most obvious pick would be mages. They can make portals. Now, yeah, portals are a different thing than summoning, but you can create some kind of like, well, you open a portal somewhere. Even if they could just like open portals to main city hubs, I don't know. Or open portals that open up in front of everybody in the raid, and they can click it and come in. Just something.
Multi-dotting,
Not having summons really does wreck a raid.
And mashing Malefic Rapture. Now, the biggest
DK
news
Cascade,
here
I
is
don't know
that
about
Siphon Life is passive. So that's just one dot gone entirely. Doom Blossom and
Only
Dread
Death
Touch
Knights can
are
handle that
also
kind of
gone.
magic.
They're replaced by a new ability that's called Oblivion, and what Oblivion is basically a single target drain soul, but it's a shard spender that is boosted by dots on the target, and also their cooldown reduction has been removed, so Dark Lair is now a solid 2 minutes. And that's just something we've generally seen. Like, they've been doing a lot of refining, like, cooldowns on different classes. A nice touch, though, is that there's a talent that gives Rapture a chance to launch a Shadow Bolt volley. Which, guess what? It looks nice. It's like playing an ARPG. It's just cool when stuff explodes out of your character. Other than that, though, it has got what looks to be quite a nice talent tree reorganization. So that should be good for just your day-to-day theory crafting and usability. Next, then, the other Warlock class, the Mage. Okay, Arcane Mage. You guys
other
used to be
Warlock class,
complicated.
damn.
You're not really as much anymore. Arcane used to have a proper launch sequence. Like,
Are those new
seriously,
animations?
Was it?
Look at all the look at that. Look at all the little like particle effects popping off with the arcane explosions. Or the arcane bursts that are happening on this. What the hell is that?
Easily the
That
most
looks
complicated
amazing.
opener in the game. They had a very complicated burst
Also looks
window,
like it's gonna drop
and
your frame
in
rate
ways
in
it was
raid.
good. It was decently rewarding when you actually mastered it, but it was very fragile. A slight mistake or an interruption
That's gotta be
would just
new. I
tank
haven't
your
seen
damage.
that.
And that was tricky because, of course, just boss fights, you know, Mythic Plus, it just wasn't amazingly suited to playing World of Warcraft. Although, admittedly, very fun in a target dummy for most people. Now, what they've done is they've taken Radiant Spark, Mana Gem, and Nether Tempest, and they've thrown them all in the bin. They've replaced them with a whole bunch of talents that just give passive bonuses to play around instead. As an example, there are new Touch of the Magi talents to buff it, and one of them
As I've understood it, there's the complicated, you know, rotation for Arcane right now is insane. People talk about how you need like a PhD to properly play Arcane Mage. So that's good that they're scrapping a lot of things for more passive stuff. Less buttons to click, hopefully, for you guys.
A hit with all three of your main abilities to cause a burst element. So basically a more usable version of Radiant Spark that doesn't end up being like extremely technical to actually do right. Another thing then, clear casting. Clear casting is now needed to use your arcane missiles. So basically they can buff it without it just taking
not the
over the
buttons,
rotation.
it's the order that's
a real
cranked.
good tool for them as designers, and it just clarifies its role in the gameplay. Also, Familiar is actually now baked into Arcane Intellect. So, overall, what we see in these changes is basically Arcane. It will still feel like Arcane in its visuals and stuff. Some things have been codified. A lot of the technicals, though, have been simplified down, I think, in a way that a lot of people will actually appreciate. This is one of those things where initially I saw these changes, thought, man, Arcane's niche, but I know there are people who love it. I did see, though, a lot of positive sentiment about this.
Either
Big
love it
picture,
or you
these
hate
are
it.
changes
I
that
never
help it
liked
fit into
Arcane.
most gameplay situations better, but of course, it does lose a bit of what made it unique.
I just dislike the lack of mobility in Arcane a lot of times with the freaking whatever that thing is, what that you put down, you know, the rune thing that you would stand on. I hated that shit. So I don't know if that's changed or not. I've not played Mage in a long time, but these changes sound pretty decent for Arcane. Yeah, I've always loved Fire the most.
Mage
Fire's
as a
been my
whole involves
favorite.
Double time warp
The
too,
critting is
so,
amazing.
Yeah,
Fire.
double time warp gone. Now you'll just be picking, I don't know, the random few seconds of a buff proc instead to do your stuff. Fire then, generally it's an okay spot, but it has got some fixes lined up.
Oh, you got a
mostly
Phoenix?
to tidy up maintenance buffs and a lack of
The hell is
AoE
that, a
choice.
Phoenix
Right
pet?
now, Living Bomb is a major component of AoE, and it's a passive applied with Fire Blast with Lit Fuse. Then we've got the improved Scorch buff. So that is now 2 stacks instead of 3, and there's a choice talent to add passive damage instead. And that means that if you want a more passive option, you've got that, but Feel the Burn is definitely still intended.
The little
to
Phoenix looks like it was working the same way as like the Water Elemental does for Frost.
Harder parts of Fire gameplay where you can show your skill. Next then, Sun King's Blessing. So that's been nerfed a bit to make Unleash Inferno, which has now got some nice AoE buffs, a bit more enticing for players, and there's a bit more gameplay in Phoenix Flames through a few talents as well. Nothing absolutely gigantic, but absolutely plenty of tweaks. Frost Mages then have only seen minor changes so far. There's some talent swapping, 2-pointers being turned into 1-pointers, and a new stacking damage buff during Icy Veins. Unholy saw the most changes of the lot, and it's mostly focused on fixing up the tree, cleaning up their cooldowns, and giving players a bit more choice. Army of the Dead is now a flat 3 minutes instead of 8 minutes with a bunch of cooldown reductions.
As it should be.
More predictable. And then Apocalypse, Dark Transformation, and Unholy Blight are now on 90 and 45-second cooldowns. Then Epidemic and Outbreak have been made baseline.
Okay, I mean, look, what I want to see with an Unholy Death Knight is just an army of ghouls almost constantly up. That's what an Unholy is supposed to be to me, is just like a massive army of ghouls and all kinds of shit at your back fighting beside you. So as long as that class fantasy looks like it's going to play out,
tree to work with,
then this seems like it's in a good spot.
The big fix to needing Death and Decay uptime to
Look
cleave
at the freaking
is a little.
This is so cool. The fact that these the 4 horsemen can just show up like this. Part of the hero
Basically,
talents.
the cleave effect is just going to stay for 4 seconds after you leave Death and Decay. So the core gameplay of Death and Decay being very important, that is still there, but it just has a bit more usability.
Yeah, it's been important even
then
for
Sudden
Blood.
Doom does not give you free coils anymore, but instead they're cheaper, they're buffed, and they pop wounds, while every 20 wounds that you pop upgrades Festering Strike to Festering Scythe for 12 seconds, applying loads of wounds in AoE, which does sound pretty neat to me. Then next, if you're a Gargoyle hater, good news, because you now get a choice talent that gives you more Magus spawns, which also do AoE damage, and that will actually make for a much more smooth dungeon damage profile. So, overall...
Yeah, I was going to say, for Mythic Plus, that's amazing. Man, Unholy should really be popping off.
I'd say all very welcome improvements.
Okay, Frost then. There's been a bunch of changes.
Now, Tundra, it looks like it was 8 minutes before. That was the change that was made. It went from 8 minutes to 3. Yeah.
Getting new auto attack focus talents and icy talons buffs
with runic power.
Essentially
Well, it looks like now you won't need
gameplay
that.
focus. Then also Breath of Sindragosa has been changed to be more of a short-term duration damage window than something that you will be trying to keep up absolutely forever. Now, I have heard feedback that for some people, they haven't went too far, and it still feels like something that they might want to extend to the point where they just feel it's kind of like dominating the identity of the spec. So maybe room for iteration there, but it does seem like they're moving in the right direction. Next then, they've added a talent so that Killing Machine procs launch Glacial Advances for AoE, which is pretty class.
Yeah, that's cool.
And also just a tree rearrangement that has generally improved pathing. I mean, it's still the same idea, but basically with more compelling options to play around with.
Frost was fun when they had the Breath of Sindragosa build, and you just had to crit your ass off to keep it up. That was kind of fun. Outside of that, it used to be a kind of a slow rotation. But I played Frost back in the day, but I haven't in a while.
Has been reworked, and people might actually use it now. Essentially, right, it's huge AoE damage on a short cooldown with there being a cooldown reduction from Killing Machine procs. So it does seem like it's got a bit more of a tidied up identity within the spec, just more of a clear niche, and to be honest with you, it just looks and feels really cool to use, so I hope it's something people can talent into.
Blood then has also gotten some real nice changes. Basically, it's generating bones on pull, Blood Drinker damage reduction,
Wait, generating bones on pull? That's fucking amazing. You guys know I've taken some bitch slaps on pull before because I don't have Bone Shield up yet.
Into.
Blood then has also gotten some real nice changes. Basically, it's generating bones on pull.
That's amazing.
Blood Drinker damage reduction, a silence being added to Gore Fiends in place of a damage buff, and Bone Storm now uses your Bone Shield instead of runic power. And I think overall this stuff is leaving Blood just feeling really
That's amazing.
On to our next class, and it is the Paladin.
Not a lot of changes, but that's a good one.
There is great news for Rat, which I think is going to be one of my new main specs. Anyway, Prot first. Prot has had a Bastion of Light redesign to instead grant more holy power from Judgment for 5 casts. Their Avenger Shield AoE versus single target choice basically isn't a choice anymore, and a few other tiny changes.
Okay, you don't have to make that choice anymore.
Consecration's damage reduction lasts for 4 seconds after you leave it. I suppose a bit inspired by what they did with Death and Decay earlier earlier with the DKs, and that basically means you won't get one tapped if you don't replace it on cooldown. So that's a nice bit of usability. Next then, Holy. You guys are seeing Light of the Martyr replaced with a passive version that gives them a heal absorb whenever they use Holy Shock instead of actually draining their HP. Probably good. Also, Light's Hammer is gone, which, I mean, is a little bit funny, and their Holy Power spenders have been buffed, though with a nerf to Beacon. The thing is, though, will it be enough to make them worth pressing? I don't know. We'll see with balance. And a strange thing, too, Blessing of Summer has actually had a redesign to be a healing to damage transfer and vice versa. I suppose a bit like Nature's Vigil and Ancestral Guidance. So, bit different. To the thing I'm excited about, though, Ret. It's got the most changes. It's a real laundry list, but I'll try to boil it down.
I feel like people have been loving Ret.
So, there's a new option that replaces Avenging Wrath with a passive that procs Avenging Wrath automatically whenever you press
Why wouldn't you
Wake of
take
Ashes.
that?
And that basically means
That's amazing.
Wake of Ashes feels awesome to press.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat. And I guess for a lot of people, a nice little consolidation of buttons. And when you take that, other things can also proc it for a few seconds as well. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
The rest of the changes then are around making the dot-oriented gameplay just a bit more interesting. Things like, say, the Wake of Ashes burn, the expurgation from Blades and Templar Slash's new dot. The Mastery has also given a new addition where it has a chance to give Judgment extra damage. Most of that is to basically make the split between AoE and single target a little bit less frustrating to talent around.
People are going to play Retribution Paladin out the ass, man. There are so many Ret Pallies right now in game. I feel like it's got to be one of the most played classes.
Bunch of other changes being done within the tree to polish up pathing and basically fix up issues with there being point sinks in the tree. And then also to fix up, thankfully, the lack of stat build choices, especially where crit is concerned. Basically, it's all good stuff, and honestly, I think Ret is just straight up one of the best specs in the game at this point.
Yeah.
It's powerful, it's got lots of utility, it's got great room for like you to show mastery within a raid. Oh, I just think it's the whole package.
The new
Zero
bloody.
time, though. So, the class tree has been pretty massively changed to move the stronger options towards the bottom, but in exchange, there is better pathing at the top and some nice new talents like Fluid Form, which lets you use specific abilities to change form instead of wasting a GCD on the shapeshift.
Interesting.
Oh, thank God, that will feel better.
That's pretty
Balance,
cool.
then, is probably getting the biggest changes. Primordial Arcanic Pulsar is
I actually think, hold on, real quick, I think this is a bigger deal than he kind of let it on to be. I mean, this plays right into the fantasy of the, playing a druid in the way that they kind of shapeshift a lot during the fight, right, based on whatever they need. This is a big deal because right now you gotta use that extra click to do it right here. I mean, this is gonna cost you. This is gonna cost you what the other does. No global cooldown on it. This is really cool for druids.
Oh, thank God, that will feel better. Balance, then, is probably getting the biggest changes. Primordial Arcanic Pulsar is gone because it was too overwhelmingly strong.
Yeah, it's called macros, but the no global cooldown's a big deal. It is.
An awesome name like that. But instead, you are getting a flat buff and a choice between a 2 or 3 minute stronger cooldown to make up for its loss. Then your AP generation is being nerfed to make pooling more of a decision that you're making, but you are getting free spender procs instead, and those are going to work with a dot amplifying buff that is applied by Star Surge. Most of the changes then are around opening up options for damage profiles, instead of, I suppose, you just feeling like you've got to go and just pick whatever made your pap windows go harder. So, stuff that looks good in paper, but it will probably feel like an overall nerf. Okay, Feral.
Right.
Feral is also getting their resources tanked. Tiger's Fury extensions and resets are gone, and energy regen is reduced. As somebody who's not played Feral in a while, that sounds really rough to me.
I have seen people
from
play
Matt's
Feral.
Experience playing it, it does not feel good at all. Now, the point...
I don't know. I feel like I haven't seen feral druids in the game in quite a while. Like all of Dragonflight, I've not seen a feral druid.
Basically move it back to its design
Could be
goal
wrong, but
of
I just feel like they've
playing
been
around
non-existent.
energy and Tiger's Fury windows instead of basically just having everything buffed all the time. I get the design intent, but if it
Sounds like
feels
people
a
still won't
nerf,
be playing feral.
it could be a problem. Next then, AoE. So, AoE has actually been reworked by basically removing Tear Open Wounds. So, instead of spamming Primal Wrath, the way to play is going to be applying buffed rips with Primal Wrath and then Ferocious Bite with Rampant Ferocity instead, basically only wrathing to refresh rip and not for the damage. So, that's going on there. Then their Berserk and Incarn durations were reduced as well. So overall, it's a bit of a funny picture here. Basically, the game feel
it just seems like an absolutely massive nerf bat. Now, of course, raw buffs to numbers can make this not be a loss in terms of your DPS or anything. I think it's just, it
doesn't seem like there's going to be a reason to start playing Feral tomorrow if you haven't already.
I think not necessarily for the better, even though there is maybe more design identity in what they're playing.
Really, Scarlet.
So that'll definitely need playtesting. Okay, Resto then. Resto actually loses Adaptive Swarm,
unstable.
but it does gain a regular Heart of the Wild proc that they can activate basically whenever for hybrid damage windows, even without talenting the spell itself. Rejuve is getting a huge buff and a talent to do instant healing, but Flourish and Photosynthesis, those are actually being moved to a choice node instead of both of them being available to you at the same time.
Ooh,
now, overall,
like
it does sound pretty good, but it is definitely a case of there being give and take. That being said, though, having 2 Swiftmen charges and a stronger Rejuve will probably make it like a bit more simple, easier to pick up. Maybe that will help with the healing problem. Okay, Guardian then. Like most tanks, basically, you got nothing just yet. There have, though, been the class tree rearrangements, but yes, do expect
it seems like all the tank specs have been minor
especially
changes.
Guardian, because the current spec tree is just a bit of a mess. Next then, Monks, where plenty has happened. So there's been a giant overhaul of the class tree, and the short version here is that most throughput has been removed from the class tree in favor of more utility. Good thing, though, is that's mostly being baked into existing spells. As an example, Disable will now soothe enrages, and Roll has actually got a snare component. Also, in pretty great news, the statues, those have been removed for the off specs, so like no more White Tiger for everybody. Another thing is Chi Wave has actually been changed. It is now a passive, and they've done that to reduce button bloat, and they've also got some new movement.
I feel like a lot of these changes are turning current abilities into passives because of the stuff that's coming with hero talents as well. So they probably just want to stop button bloat from happening, as you were saying.
It's pretty fun. As an example, a Transcendence that links to an ally's location. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's nice.
A double jump dash thingy you can do after roll. That's really cool. And
oh my god, as if they didn't have enough movement ability already. This is probably, they took this double jump stuff with the dash from, what's it called? From Plunder Store.
Basically an auto gap
because if you had the right abilities, you'd be able to do that in Plunder Store.
That's fun. That immediately just makes me think, oh, awesome. Monks can just do more. And also, you get a 15% out of combat move speed boost.
What?
Yeah, I'm going to rate that with a hell yes. Okay, Brewmaster.
Where is the Death Knight movement speed boost? Jesus, we're so slow. They give it to monks?
You're one of the tanks who have actually got changes at this stage anyway. So, the quick version here is the loss of Bone Dust Brew and Healing Elixir, but a bunch of Stagger and Purifying Brew improvements have been added. Basically, so that stuff is like looping into each other. The point is that Purifying Stagger will feel more worthwhile and will help your survivability more at higher levels of play. I think that's good. It's doubling down on what the core identity of the spec is. Though I guess I do wonder about their self-sustain. Anyway, both Improved Celestial Brew and Purifying Brew are now also baseline. Mistweaver then. So you guys are finally using Essence Font. Renewing Mists is getting a talent to give it a crazy healing taken buff for a bit. And some good news, Rising Sun Kick gets one to trigger Gusts. And that does mean that Mastery is not dead for Fistweavers. So I suppose we can take that
Continue
as a win.
fisting.
Then Teachings of the Monastery is baseline. Now, Blizzard said they've still got quite a lot of work to do on raid healing, so I would expect to see plenty of changes. Still, Mistweaver I think is a great spec, so it's not like it really needs too much more. Okay then, time to talk about Windwalker Monk. They had a lot of work done.
Windwalker Monk.
Really a lot. It's honestly hard to know where to start. But let's just do it with Serenity, which has been deleted. There's now a new option instead of hit combo called Flurry of Juan, which basically is a proc that looks really cool. A bunch of builds are being opened up with some new
idea what he's
talents,
talking about right now. I know nothing about this class.
A single target focused stomp that doesn't reset, a Whirling Dragon Punch that gives you 8 stacks of Ancient Teachings, and Rushing Jade Wind, but in the form of a passive. Yes, a passive that is activated by Strike of the Windlord. I think that's much nicer. There's starting combat with 2 Chi, there's combo strikes being triggered by Storm, Earth, and Fire, and Spinning Crane Kick. Well, Spinning Crane Kick now does not prevent auto attacks. So, altogether, right, it is just a massive heap of changes that's honestly kind of hard to describe, except that honestly, I think Windwalker should be feeling pretty pumped for their new toys and a lot of these things that are being fixed
good for them.
Now, whoever's in charge of Rogue is clearly a bit more focused on touching up the incomplete hero talents.
Oh my god, I want to see what happens to Sub Titty, man, because if you don't know yet, Sub Titty Rogue was at the very, very top of the DPS charts for almost the entirety of Dragonflight, and then fell to the very bottom. I've never seen a spec go from number 1 to dead last that hard. So they need something, man. Yeah, they need something.
Massive amounts of class changes, but they still do have a bit
Right
going
now,
on.
Assassination
We've got a
Rogue's the
stacking
best.
auto damage
Or
and
should I say
move speed
SS?
buff in combat, and we've got Shadow Dance and Night Stalker being removed from the class tree, so that's fairly big. Now, having these together was, of course, just a bit too strong, and it really
They need
did
some
overwhelm
milk.
the class tree a little, so that seems good. Now, Subtlety does still get 2 charges, but from its own tree instead, but not many changes beyond that, except that Pre-Med now makes your next generator fill your points after stealthing, and talents have swapped about locations a bit. Big picture, there is likely more to come, so let's move on to Outlaw, which now has got Adrenaline Rush scale with haste instead of being a flat 25% boost to GCD speed. Sepsis is gone, and more talent shuffling has went on to improve pathing. The range of Blade Flurry has also been increased to 8 yards instead of just being melee range, so I guess that'll be pretty handy.
Yeah, that's
Assassination
nice.
then also loses Sepsis, but also has Serrated Bone Spike turned into a passive applied by Rupture, and a new talent that gives
Passive
Envenom
again.
10% bonus damage while already active, which very much is just pushing the gameplay of like keeping up your Envenom
Keeping
uptime.
keeping the poison.
Next then, Warrior as well. Class-wise, you guys have got a lot of reorganization. Utility is way easier to get to, but you do lose some rage generation talents. Things like, say, Shockwave, Thunderous Roar, and Spear have all got less or no rage attached, but your specs are getting some pretty big changes too to go along with that. Arms then, you guys were swimming in rage, and often it felt bad more than good. You had too many resources, lots of resets overlapping, and to that end, well, Arms has lost a ton of rage and has got less of a chance to reset Overpower, but instead you've got things
Sounds
like
like
a
a nerf.
chance of free Whirlwinds and Cleaves, and you've got some lower rage costs. Now, the fun thing is that Cleave is down to 3 seconds, and it triggers Fervor,
Oh, damn.
which means it's basically more important in the AoE
Non-stop
rotation.
cleaving.
Blizz have also switched up the tree plenty, and they've buffed alternatives to all the Test of Might talents, so basically it seems you'll be able to pick talents instead of just needing to run that particular one. The last thing of note then is that now
Kale Sauce
Arms
probably
and
doing
Fury
beta.
both get to pick either Blade Storm or Ravager as choice nodes. Next, Fury Warrior. So, Fury had a problem where it struggled with wanting to press Bloodthirst, which kind of sucked because it's their most iconic ability. So, it's getting buffed in almost every way,
As
even
it should.
extending current enrages if it doesn't refresh it. Also, Annihilator is dead. Instead, there's an alternative to Frenzied Enrage that makes Enrage last a bit longer and buffs overall damage, so basically you can still have a less RSI-inducing
sound like good
Fury
changes.
experience without half the talent tree becoming useless like with Annihilator. Then you also get Bladestorm back if you want to use that over Ravager. Protection then. Prada's only got a few tiny changes, but they are impactful. Defensive stance no longer has a damage penalty, so you can stay in it for the damage reduction. Battle stance
This is
still
actually
better
kind of a common theme that I've been seeing. The protection stance, not limiting your damage anymore, and then the rework of damage-based tanking trinkets. We just talked about that in the news run around that we just did, and yeah, Blizzard's seemingly trying to up the amount of damage that most tanks can do. I think they saw that a lot of people liked how Havoc Demon Hunter was working out, right? So high damage tanking, especially for Mythic Plus runs, and it seems like they're trying to boost the damage for the other tanks as well.
for DPS with 3%
Make
crit,
damage
but
good again
if you don't
for
want
tanks.
to stance, you're not going to be punished anywhere near as hard. The other impact is a new talent that reduces their magic damage taken by 5%, which certainly will smooth out one of their weaknesses as a tank. Priests then, this will be real quick. Basically, for Discipline, Rapture only works on the next 3 power word shields, but it buffs them by a pretty whopping 80%.
Damn.
That's it for the changes. Maybe there will be more, but certainly those are going to be some pretty damn big shields. Okay, so there you have it. A very quick rundown of all of the changes so far.
Where's the
my
hunters?
goal here is that essentially you're getting a bit of a TLDR, right? We will have to do way more in-depth testing, and the good news is that with beta and like endgame templates soon being a thing,
Emoji.
we'll be able to do that properly and bring you good deep dives into every single class. In terms of changes, though, Demon Hunters are still waiting. It seems that Hunters are also waiting. Evokers
Okay.
have got almost nothing yet, except for some quality of life.
So
buffs to
Hunters haven't seen
Firestorm
much yet.
And minor changes to Preservation's tree pathing. Shamans are rather in the same boat. We'll, again, just have to wait for some more beta builds to see what the
You
new
bitch.
those
You
guys.
fucking
So,
bitch.
my question
This
is,
is what I get for
how are you
trusting.
feeling?
No, I'm not doing this.
I mean, I know it's a bit hard to wrap your head around all of this because this is all on top of the hero
Hunters get
talent
depression.
trees, which are 2 per spec. And again, we'll be back with far more in-depth coverage on every single class once it is beta and we get to do that like proper endgame testing. Anyway, that's your TLDR.
So you only get-
Not that this was a particularly short video, but it turns out trying to cover 30 whatever specs.
Oh yeah, not bad timing in
one
terms of
video
how long
is
the video actually
insane.
wasn't covering all the
Maybe
specs.
we should have done a different plan. Anyway, let me know how you're feeling. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, not bad at all. Pretty cool video. Listen, a lot of the changes seem to be doing one thing, and they have one thing in common, and that is eliminating ability bloat. Right? We're getting a bunch of talents coming with the, hero talents and everything else. And it seems like they're trying to eliminate a lot of the, we're going to have too many buttons to click problem. And then as far as tanking goes, upping the DPS for tanks, it seems like a big thing. I mean, I feel like as a Blood DK, I haven't done real DPS since I had my, what's it called? My gavel in Shadowlands, right? That was the last time I was like really able to pump and be like, oh, I'm in a raid, but I'm pumping top 5 DPS kind of shit. So we'll have to wait and see how those things carry out. But as far as the rest of the specs, I guess you guys are to be determined, right? Hunters haven't gotten much. Shamans, evokers, you guys will probably get more coming down the line. But nice video from Bellular.